Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Connversations podcast. This is your host Finn Dumber, and today we're doing ASMR. Okay, I can't keep it up. It was funny for a while, but I can't do that whole episode. I will go insane. Welcome people to another episode of the Connversations podcast. I am your host Finn Dumber, as always. However, as you would have noticed from this camera angle, this is a slightly different episode today. I haven't got a guest. It is purely just me and you. And the two cameras and the mic. Basically, not a lot's changed. I just haven't got someone sat on that chair, I promise. The reason being is because today is quite a big day for Conversations, actually. It's something that I've been planning for quite a while. I want to do a mini-series. So, welcome to the first mini-series of the Conversations podcast, which is called Conn's Corner. Woo! Conn's Corner is actually a name that I've been thinking about for... Actually, it was the original name of the podcast. So way before Conversations, way before the Concast podcast, the initial thought that I had for the podcast was actually Conn's Corner. I like the name. I still do, obviously, which is why I've named this mini-series Conn's Corner. But I don't think it fits the whole podcast. I think Conversations is more fitting, personally for me. So, Conn's Corner is a mini-series that is just me and you. There's no guests. It's a break away from the guests for me to really dig down into the heart of conversations. A direct advice or words, anything to help you guys take control of your lives, essentially. I want to give you advice week in, week out, or well, whenever the episode's there, obviously, to help inspire change and to give you guys something that's helped me in my life that may also be able to help you. They're going to be a much shorter episodes. I'm looking at around 20 minutes. Although I did just win an award for communication, so I'm clearly the biggest yapper in Kent. So it might be double. It could even be triple. Let's just see how we go. But please do tune in. This won't be every week. We obviously, as you know, the guests are once a fortnight at the moment. So Conn's Corner will be something that's done more sporadically. Perhaps there'll be an episode every couple of months. Perhaps I'll do something with Instagram with the Make Way Mondays that I'm going to start doing again soon. Perhaps we'll link Conn's Corner into that so you still get a bit of content without it being a whole podcast. So let's see where we go. Anyway, starting this episode, I wanted to, before we go into episodes with lots of advice and motivation and how to take control of your life and how to do this, I wanted to start actually for probably the first time, speak to you guys about the heart of conversations. Why we even do this. So let's rewind completely. Let's go through the life of Finn Dumber. So I was born in 2001. Okay, so as a bit far, but to explain my story of conversations, let's begin with my upbringing. So I'm going to be honest. I've had quite a blessed upbringing. I'm very grateful for the things I've had. Even just the fact, I know it sounds silly, but I do practice a lot of gratitude in my life. And looking back, I'm even more grateful the fact that I've had a loving family around me. I've had parents that have looked after me. I've got things that every kid would have wanted as a child. I mean, I had a PlayStation 3. I had a PlayStation 4 when it came out, you know. Think of my first iPhone until maybe year 9, maybe. So... I mean, that's probably ridiculous now. I mean, kids are getting them when they're like 5, aren't they? I mean, but yeah, I had a normal childhood, but a very blessed one at that, in a middle-class family, and I am very grateful. I'm grateful for the fact that I've got 4 working limbs today. I'm sat here talking to you. I'm alive. I've had, things that third world countries don't have. Gratitude is a huge part of me and who I am today. So yeah, I've had a very blessed childhood. With Connor, I think we need to really not dive into that with my childhood. So yeah, explain to you, Connor, in my experience. So I'm lucky enough to have 3 siblings, Beth, James and Connor. Shout out Beth and James, by the way. Absolute legends. Love them all to pieces. Every single one of them in their own ways. And
I didn't live with James or Beth. I mean, we kind of did. It's complicated. Connor was the sibling that I lived with day in, day out, 18 years without question. All the way from when I was born until I was 18 when he passed. That was it. He was the brother that I lived with and I grew up with and learnt so much from. And not to be a sob story, and I think I said this before in a previous podcast, but I had speech delay when I was young. I was diagnosed with autism, ASD and ADHD. I had very delayed speech growing up, and I'm sure my parents are probably wondering, is Finn ever going to be able to function like a normal adult? In some ways, I still don't. I'm joking. I think I'm quite functional now, but I do owe a lot of that to Connor and the behaviours that he taught me. Some were very good, some were pretty shit. I mean, my mum always jokes and say he corrupted me, but I do owe a lot of who I am today to Connor, and for that I'm so blessed. Growing up with Connor, we actually had 4 years difference in ages, and that's not obviously a huge amount, but for likes of, let's say, James, I know you're watching this, James, or maybe you're not, maybe not a supporter. I'm not going to say anything. You're going to text me if you're listening to this, because I want to hear you say, I'm listening, I heard it. So shout out. But we had 9 years between us, and that's a long, long time when you're growing up. So when I was 9, James was 18. You know, even when he was 21, I was 12. I mean, there's a huge difference. We didn't have a lot in common growing up, other than football, obviously, up the Chels. But with Connor, 4 years wasn't ridiculous, but we didn't really get along when we were really young. I mean, let's say when I was 8, he was 12. You know, he was in secondary school. I just started primary, like almost. You know, there was we didn't have much in common. We clashed a lot. I was the annoying brat brother, still am, to be fair, just a bit older. And yeah, I really pissed him off growing up a lot. I don't think it was ever the other way around. I think I was just annoying him. And it was only until perhaps I must have been about 12. I would have just started secondary school. Connor was 16, 17, just gone into college, that we actually started to really get along as brothers. You know, less of the fights and more just actually being there for each other. And Connor didn't talk a lot about how he felt. I think he explained when things went wrong, and trust me, that kid had stories. He would explain what happened in like a matter of fact way, but he very rarely spoke about how he actually was feeling. And I don't know whether he did the same with other people. I can't vouch for other people and how he spoke, but we had many evenings, me and Connor, where he would just talk to me. He would just speak his mind. Some things I obviously can't say. Majority I couldn't say what he spoke about because it was very personal and private. But I didn't really notice that until after he passed, and I was thinking, oh my God, like Connor did really talk to me, but he almost needed an outlet, and I'm glad I was one of them in that sense. Unfortunately, that outlet wasn't enough, and I wish there could have been more that I could have done, or anyone in that respect. Connor had so many people that loved him, and he loved so many people, and I don't know what his relationships are like with other people, but I mean, clearly Connor needed support, and yeah, it was tough for us as a family. It was obviously horrible for Connor. And in the summer of 2019, I just turned 18, Connor took his life in the July the 15th. And I've spoke about that period, and I don't really on this podcast want to go into detail about those final days. It won't serve you guys, and I think it'll just get me too emotional. That isn't the point of this podcast. It's more just to explain Connor. But yeah, it was a very bizarre period when Connor passed. I remember that first week that he passed away on a Monday. I started my first full-time proper job, adult job, on the Monday after, which is still crazy to think about that I actually even did that. But it was a very bizarre week, and I couldn't really sleep. I didn't really know what to do. I didn't even know starting my job's the right thing. And I guess I found myself from July that year to COVID in March when we went into lockdown. I was just keeping busy. I was just out every weekend. In hindsight, I wish I could have stayed at home with mum a bit more. But what would have I been doing other than just sitting at home? I needed to keep busy. I needed to live like a normal 18-year-old. So I went partying, and you know what? I did have a good time, and I had some really amazing people around me. A really good support network. You know, that first Christmas was horrible for us as a family, but having those 3 friends who will know who they are there was incredible, and I'll never forget the support I had from my friends during those years. Never, ever, ever. And when COVID hit, as we all know, it was a tricky period. At first, it was okay, but then it suddenly dawned on me, and I'm sure it does to a lot of you guys listening out there, like the uncertainty of the world, what's going to happen. But more than anything, my mind stopped being busy. I was just at home. Well, I was actually on the boat then, just there. I had to really face what happened to Connor for the first time. And then that's when you start going in spirals, like the what ifs, and then you start imagining scenarios where Connor's still here, and like, you know, is there something that we could have done to support him? And, you know, ultimately, you've just got to have that really ruthless mindset of, it's what's done is done. Like, we cannot change it. And then you got to learn to live with that. I was actually talking to someone, I won't name drop him, but about a year ago, I sat on a train having a conversation, and I explained to him about, well, grief and how I dealt with grief and how he's dealt with grief in his own way. And he said, like, Finn, with grief, it's almost like the pain never goes, it never gets smaller, but your heart grows around it. You fill it with opportunities and love and all this positive stuff that helps you manage that pain more. And I cannot agree more. You know, that I really think that's happened over the years. I feel my life with more purpose and more love and more friends and family that mean a lot to me, that help you deal with that pain. So I cannot stress enough the importance of family and your loved ones in general when dealing with grief or any sort of negative experience happens in your life. But I must digress. It's all well and good saying about me, but to go back to Connor, I mean, there's one pain that me and, obviously they say with suicide, you know, the biggest pain is the loved ones that are left behind, you know, when they take their life. And I do agree with that, but one thing with grief that I still can't, with suicide especially, specifically, that I still can't get my head around is how Connor would have felt in those final days. I mean, not to be negative, but I've got to be honest, and the way I do think, for someone to hit those lows, I'm very lucky that I haven't been able to comprehend myself. But I'm sure there are viewers, or there just certainly are people out there that have experienced the lows of the lows. And I'm very grateful I haven't, but it pains me to think how can someone get to that point? Which then leads us very nicely into why I started Take The Conn and Conversations. So, COVID happened, and 5 years passed in a flash. Or was it 4 when up to the point when I'm talking? It just flew. I kind of, after COVID, let life just lead me. I just let it take me where, you know, as most people, 99% of the population probably do. They find a job, it pays the bills, it's a safe job, it's a clear career path, and you just let life just take you. You know, you don't really think twice. And it got to 2024, actually to be specific, Christmas 23, I was just chilling. It was the break between Christmas where, like, you're not, you know, for people that work 9 to 5, you get a bit of annual leave, few days shut, bank holidays around Christmas. You get almost 2 weeks off, don't you, over Christmas and New Year? And I remember I was just chilling at home, probably gaming or something, just, relaxing and just unwinding, because it's been it's always a really busy year. And I had a shower midday. Random, I know, but like, what else would I do over Christmas? But anyway, had a shower, and I don't even know what hit me, but I just all of a sudden just stopped letting life lead me, and I just took a step back and just sort of analysed, right, I'm here, this is where I'm at, what would I like to do? The first thought that popped into my head was, I think my reason for being is to be a voice or someone that can just not for the attention or anything, but just use my qualities to try and inspire and help people take control of their lives almost, just help them become better, well, not better people, but just a 2.0 version of them. And a podcast popped in my head, and it was like woo, light bulb moment, woo. I was like, wow, okay, podcast. I can have a podcast where I invite a guest on to speak about their mental health, and it just all kind of just flowed from there. And I went to my mum and I was like, oh, well, actually, no, this was a lot longer. I actually sat on this idea for like about 7 months before I actually told anyone. First of all, podcast is parked for a minute. Come early February, I, again, was having these sorts of thoughts about my job, my work, my career, and life in general. Basically like a quarter-life crisis, it felt like, but a good one. And I went to my mum one evening and said, like, Mum, I've just had this idea. Is there a way we can set up like some sort of foundation or like charity one day in memory of Connor? And I didn't really know where I was going with this, but then Mum said, it's funny you say that, because I haven't said this to anyone, but since Connor passed, this is my mum speaking, I've kind of mulled over this idea of the same thing or similar idea, and I wanted it to be called Take The Conn. I was like, what do you mean by what's Take The Conn? Like, what even is that? She explained to me, it's a nautical term that means to take control of a ship. So a commander or someone would go to the commander. Is it the commander that pilots the ship? I don't know, sails the ship? I don't know. But yeah, you'd say you go to the commander of the ship. You'd say, Captain, that's it. Commander goes to the captain and say, Take The Conn, which means take control, take command of the ship or vessel. I thought, wow, what an amazing idea. My mum explained Take The Conn about how she wanted this thing where we could one day have this centre where people come to seek advice and help and support from a young age to try and just find their way in life. Because, as you guys listening to this and watching this, when you left school, did you really have a Scooby of what you wanted to do? Or maybe you thought you knew what you wanted to do, but you didn't like, got a couple of years later, you're like, oh damn, this isn't actually what I wanted to do. That is the idea behind it. We want to just give people, but not only those that are feeling that they don't know their career, but also feeling lost, that they don't have any hope. We want to give people that hope and that there is a place for you in this world. You are deserving of being here. And it's just finding that path, which is what we're striving to do going forward. So that's Take The Conn. And Take The Conn got parked for a while. Again, I won't go into that just yet. But then it got to summer. I'd left my job as an accountant. I realised, but this is just before summer, I left my job. I realised that I needed purpose in life. I felt, going to be honest, that I was just being wasted sat at a desk in an office. I've got too much energy to just be sat there. I'm like a Labrador retriever. Like I need to be moving around and talking and doing stuff. So I just followed my heart and just like on my gut and bang, left. Decision was made within a month, if that. It was quite brazy of me to do that, but bang, out. Take The Conn was parked. It had been established about a month before I left my job, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I felt quite lost during that period, and it got to, fast forward to summer. I then picked up the idea of the podcast again. I said to my good friend Cam, actually, if you're watching this as well, I said to Cam and said, because Cam's one of the only people really that I feel like in my life that I can just speak my entire mind to. That's someone that won't judge me, and I mean, me and him have had some really deep chats, and I'm forever grateful for our friendship, Cam. And I felt safe enough to speak to Cam about this. And I just explained the idea of the podcast, and I wasn't really sure if it's a good idea. I guess I always have self-doubted myself in the past. And he turned around to me and went, Finn, you have to do that. I was like, really? He was like, yeah, like, do it. That's such a good idea. And I could even I don't know whether he offered it or I said it to him. I think I might have mentioned to him and said, well, would he be up for co-hosting? Because obviously Cameron loves the camera. I'm joking. But he's got had a lot more experience and still does of being in front of the camera. So that was it. And let's fast forward now to the first episode of Conversations. Again, this was probably within about a week. Classic ADHD. Coming up with the idea, let's do the podcast, bang. It was like, I said I wanted to do the podcast to Cam. 3 days later, we're up in Folkestone buying a mic from CEX, which is actually there. You can't sit in the camera, but there's that camera probably won't. But there's a camera there that was the first microphone we bought for the Concast. I didn't even have a camera. Kev, Cameron's dad, very grateful for you again. Helped us with the recording equipment. It was a very basic sort of setup. And that first episode, oh my God, I was shitting myself. Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't let on how nervous I was to Cam or Kev, but I'm sure they realised. Pretty sure we had to re-record the intro to that podcast 10 times. Maybe Kev will say more. I don't know. It felt like about 10 times. I kept stumbling on my words, not knowing what to say. So that was funny. I was absolutely cacking it. And we're now in episode 30, which is so crazy. Episode 30, this is, 30 conversations, 30 people that have been brave enough to come on and speak about their mental health. And I've learned so much in that time, and I'm so grateful for Cam pushing me to do that. Kev helping, everyone that's helped. There's been so many people that every single guest that's come on, I mean, without them, this wouldn't be what it is today, so I cannot thank them enough. And hopefully that is many people that have been helped by this podcast and felt inspired and empowered to make a positive change to their life. And it goes without saying, I have learned so much from this whole journey. We started last September. So when, at the time of recording, it's October 27th. It's been 13, almost 14 months since we started. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is the power of vulnerability. When I first came up with this idea of this podcast, I didn't understand the impact it was going to have on me and the guest and people watching. It's really inspired vulnerability from everyone, not just the guest. But with the guest, them coming on to speak about things that they've probably never even vocalized before, it's been up in their head. And they've come and said it on this podcast when sometimes not even their closest family. If you've listened to or watched any of our previous podcasts, you probably heard a guest say, "Oh, not many people even know this." Blah blah blah. It's crazy, and I think it's very important to understand that vulnerability isn't weakness. It is, in fact, the opposite. It is so powerful and so brave of these people to come on and be open enough with me to talk about that. I don't know whether that's me because of who I am or it's conversations in general that they feel inspired enough to come on. But I must say, not only is it the guests that are coming on, but the amount of messages we've received from people just opening up to me and just saying, look, this is how I feel, this is what I've been through, but I just don't think I'm ready to come on the podcast. And so many people. And I'm guys, I know you're watching this, whoever's watching this, I'm so grateful that you've even said that. It's just understanding. I think what I want from this podcast is just for people to realise that you aren't alone, And even if you don't feel like you can come on to speak about how you feel, I hope these people that come on give you that beacon of light, that inspiration to know that there are people that may feel similarly to you and have ways to cope with their mental health that can also help you. It's just to give the vulnerable, the isolated, that voice in a world where mental health services aren't accessible. I think it's very important that these people come on this podcast, feel like they have a voice, and to help them with their mental health. And the final thing that I've learned from running this podcast, and what I think you guys should really take with you in your stride going forward, is the power of talking. And I mean, I'm overqualified for that crap. Like, mate, like, I'm a chief yapper. I think this podcast is always half an hour long, I think, now. So, yeah, 20 minutes, what about? But the power of talking is so, so important and cannot be underestimated. Just, if there's anything you can do this week, or just take into your stride going forward with your life, ask your mate, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your aunt, uncle, brother or sister, dad, mum, guardian, Bob down the road, your reptile, maybe not your reptile won't understand what you're saying, but like, just speak to people and just not only to express how you feel about something, but to also give them a window, an opportunity to feel like they can be heard, and you can actually, what am I trying to think of? What's the word I'm trying to think of? That they feel that they can open up to you, right? Even if they don't open up to you, let's just say you go to someone and go, you're right, Bob, how you doing? And I've said it before in a previous episode where you can ask, how are you? Or, how are you doing twice. Sometimes that second one, say, how are you doing, Bob? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Bob, how are you really feeling? Having that extra, how are you, can make them think. And sometimes they may go and say, oh, I'm honestly all right, Finn. Or they might go and say, actually, Finn, things aren't really going well at the moment. Can we have a chat? And that's the best scenario. Sometimes they won't do that and they will just say they're okay. That's okay. Either option is a win. Because the fact that you've said to them, how are you doing? You've given them that window that they are seen, they are heard, they can be heard. And it just gives them that subconscious inlet that they know that someone actually genuinely wants to listen to them and know how they are genuinely doing. And that is so powerful. I think there's so many people with mental health struggles that as long as they just have a few people that in their lives that genuinely want to know how they're doing and they love them and they care for them, one day they may just go to that Bob or whoever it is and just open up to them. Just create that inlet, guys. You don't need to pull things out of people. You don't need to push people to talk about their mental health. Just give them that inlet. Just say, how are you doing, Bob? And then that will tell them you love them, they matter, and you care for them. And maybe one day they will speak to you. That's it for the first episode of Conn's Corner, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that. And if you'd like me to do this more often, let me know. Put it in the comments, put it on Instagram, send me a message. I would love to hear your feedback and whether there's a way that I could even, what's the word? I'm losing my words today. What am I thinking of? What's the word where you're like trying to, just grow the episodes basically. I can't think of the word. But yeah, if there's any feedback at all, please do let me know. Hope everyone has an amazing rest of their week, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time for, actually, it's our first anonymous guest, I'm pretty sure, that will be coming out. So, it's really exciting, actually. We've got plenty of guests coming up, but if you do want to come to the podcast, please do message. We always need more guests. We've got a steady flow at the moment, but that steady flow does eventually run out, and we need you. We need you to come onto the podcast. So don't feel like your story doesn't matter, because it does. Please do reach out, and I promise you, whatever you have to say will help someone out there. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you in a fortnight. Cheerio.